Hi again, everybody, and welcome to Inside Golf. I'm Harry Donahue. Did you ever hear of Ed Stewart, Porky Oliver? Chances are you didn't. But Ed Oliver may be one of the best PGA Tour professionals that nobody remembers. He got his start caddying right here. Then it was known as the Wilmington Country Club. It's now the Ed Oliver Golf Club. Went on tour and competed against the likes of Ben Hogan, Gene Sarazen, Byron Nelson, and Sam Snead. And yet, hardly anybody knows his story. Well, when we come back, we'll talk to the author of the book, The Way He Played the Game. It's the life story of Ed Oliver, and there's a lot there. Join us as we talk about Ed Oliver and what he meant to the game of golf, to Wilmington and beyond, right here on Inside Golf.
The 25th season of Inside Golf is presented by Destination Montco Golf. Your next golf getaway is in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. Visit montcogolf.com. By the First Tee Greater Philadelphia. The First Tee not only helps young men and women become better golfers, but most important, better people. Get involved. Visit firstteephiladelphia.org. By the Philadelphia Association of Golf Course Superintendents, a community of professionals enhancing the game of golf since 1925. Make sure you thank your golf course superintendent today. By Gap, celebrating 125 years of amateur golf. By Jersey Man and Philly Man Magazine, a digital publication and private business network. Read the current issue free at jerseymanmagazine.com. By the Haverford Trust Company. For life's must-haves, there's Haverford. And by Inside Golf's partner since 1998, the Philadelphia PGA Section, the experts in the game and business of golf.
Golf is the great equalizer. For many, this journey is an escape from reality, a chance to be part of a team, a career opportunity. PGA Reach impacts lives through golf by lifting people up, giving them hope, and sending them down an alternate path that they never saw coming. With PGA Reach Philadelphia, as in life and in golf, the most important shot you take is the next one.
Welcome back to Inside Golf. We're at the Ed Oliver Golf Club in Wilmington, Delaware, talking about maybe the greatest golfer that nobody ever heard of, Ed Oliver. And joining us, John Riley, who wrote a book about Ed Oliver. Not only that, but he knew the Oliver family, and he himself, a native of Wilmington. Thanks for joining us, John.
Great to be here.
Also, our noted historian of all things Philadelphia area golf, Mr. Pete Trenum, who is formerly, of course, the head pro at St. David's and always a major contributor to Inside Golf. Thanks again for joining us today, Pete.
It's great to be here.
Ed Oliver was a native of Wilmington, Delaware. Johnny was born, what, 1915, correct?
1915. Right.
And lived a short life.
Yes. Died of cancer, 1961.
Talk about the early days and how he got involved in golf.
Well, actually, he was born down on the river, right down the street, probably less than a mile from here. And he got his start in golf by walking across the river on the other side. At age 11, he started caddying at the DuPont Country Club. And the caddy master and the golf pro at that time, Tommy Fisher from Scotland, of course, as so many of the pros were in those days, took an interest in him because he looked like he had some real ability. He joined their golf team, and very shortly thereafter, he really blossomed. The caddy master here, a fellow by the name of Nuki Bird, he was like a sandlot football player, ran the caddy shack for Wilmington Country Club, saw him play and said, I got to have that guy for my golf team. So he, quote, hustled him to come up the street on this side and begin caddying at Wilmington Country Club. And he went on to, make a huge splash, winning, the Philadelphia Caddy Championship, took Wilmington Country Club to a couple of caddy titles.
Okay, and he was self-taught. I mean, you talk back in the day about a caddy swing. I guess he had the ultimate caddy swing, and he was a heck of a player.
He really was self-taught. Tommy Armour took an interest in him and gave him various tips. And another guy who helped him out that was a mentor to him was Ed Dudley. who was very, very well known, of course, went on to become the president of the PGA over that many of those years when Oliver was on tour.
What was waiting for him out there in terms of the competition?
Of course, Byron Nelson and Hogan was just starting to win tournaments, and Snead and
An old timer by the name of Gene Sarazen
yeah,
was
Sarazen
also waiting for him out there.
That's right.
Probably, he won or not won, but he finished second in 3 majors.
That's correct.
And in a 4th major, Pete, tell the story, maybe his most disappointing finish in a tournament that maybe he had a chance to win except for a rare rule infraction.
Well, yeah, 1940, he won twice on the PGA Tour. He won the Crosby and he won at Phoenix. And the U.S. Open was at Canterbury in Cleveland. And Guy Riegel told me a little bit, that the USGA never wanted to say too much about it because they made a mistake and they didn't want to talk about it. But anyway, the first group went off and Ed was in the second group, and after he hit his drive, somebody said, I think you're pushing it, maybe you shouldn't be going off too early. So he waited, he stood on the tee. He waited until his starting time, then they walked down the fairway and they played their shots to the green, and pretty soon an official from the USGA came out and said, notified them that they were facing disqualification for teeing off ahead of their starting time.
Wow.
So they played the round under protest, and they continued to play, and Ed Oliver shot 71, and it turned out he tied with Lawson Little and Gene Sarazen for first place.
Now, Sarazen at the time was probably about 15 years older, so he was in his 40s
He was
probably.
on the twilight, yeah.
But he was one of the top premier players in world golf. And there's a story I read where when they announced that they'd have a playoff the next day, and that unfortunately Ed Oliver wouldn't be part of it because of the disqualification, Sarazen said, I would have beaten him anyway.
Yeah, well, Lawson Little and
So he was a cocky Gene Sarazen.
well,
the
Lawson
squire.
Little and Sarazen both said they thought he ought to be able to play. They didn't think he should be disqualified. And Sarazen said, don't worry, I'll beat both of them tomorrow.
Right. Well, he never had the chance to beat Ed Oliver.
No, and he lost to Lawson Little.
How about that? What a disqualification. John, but he also finished second without a DQ in 3 other majors, including twice, I think, to Ben Hogan, right?
One at the Masters where he finished second to Hogan, where he tied the lowest score ever shot in the Masters previously, Hogan. He finished second to Hogan there, but the first time he finished second to Hogan in a major was the 46 PGA. And at that time, Hogan went through each round playing relative no-names out in Oregon at the PGA Championship. Oliver faced a pretty strong opponent every round, including the quarterfinals. He plays Byron Nelson, who's the greatest golfer in the world at that time, 36 holes, and Oliver beats him on the 36th hole.
Wow.
Spoiled the whole tournament with the national press and everybody because they're all hoping for this famous finish between Hogan and Byron Nelson. The next day he has to play another great golfer, Jug McSpadden, and he takes him out, 5-3. He meets Hogan in the finals. He is 3 up on Hogan at the end of the first 18. And Hogan goes on fire, birdies 8 out of the next 10 holes in the afternoon. Now, one of the things that I sort of propose possibly in the book is that Oliver in the previous 3 days had played 100 holes of golf. And he weighed about 220 to Hogan's 140. And was he just wearing out? But
So fatigue may have had something to do with it.
Yep, could have.
One newspaper article made a great statement. They said at the end of 18 they were fairly close, and Ben Hogan went to practice and Ed Oliver went to lunch.
Right. Everybody liked to write about his appetite all the time, and of course that is how you end up with the name Porky.
Yeah, that was his nickname.
Yep. Before he died, he said Snead gave him the name.
Really?
Yeah, Snead gave him the nickname.
He probably gave a lot of people a name. Gentlemen, hold on to that thought. We'll be back. More on the life of Ed Oliver, runner-up in 3 majors. He also played on 3 winning U.S. Ryder Cup teams. We'll be back to talk about the life of Ed Oliver with John Riley and Pete Trenum when Inside Golf returns in just a moment.
range of BMW X vehicles available no matter what adventure lies around the corner. There's an X for that. Hurry in and lease a 2022 BMW X3 X-Drive 30i for $539 per month.
Welcome back. Inside Golf continues from Wilmington, the Ed Oliver Golf Club. We're talking about Ed Oliver and what a career he had, and maybe, as I mentioned earlier, the best golfer that nobody ever heard about. We're talking with John Riley, who wrote a book about Ed Oliver, how he played the game, and we're also here with our historian, Pete Trenum. You know, we talked a little bit at that last segment about the nickname that he had, Porky. He had another nickname. What was it?
Snowball.
Snowball.
So when he first went out on tour, he was known as Snowball. When he won the Philadelphia Caddy Championships, he was known as Snowball. That name came from his reputation as an all-around athlete, I might add, because of his accuracy throwing snowballs.
Really?
So, that's correct. He was considered such an all-around athlete. He only went to 1 year of high school, right down the street here at Alexis I. DuPont. He led his team to the conference title in baseball, where he averaged 14 strikeouts a game as a freshman in high school and batted .450. So he was a fantastic all-around athlete, and the kids named him Snowball, and all of the golfers, friends in Wilmington all his life only called him Snowball. They never called him Porky.
Let's talk a little bit about, like a lot of great athletes in that era, their careers were interrupted by World War II, okay? And Ed Oliver, Pete, was certainly part of that collection of athletes as a golfer.
He was drafted before the war when they were starting to build up the armed forces because of war in Europe.
And John, the story goes that he got a telegram that he was being drafted, and then he found out subsequently, a few days later, after making a cross-country trip in a car, that they didn't need him. Tell us about that.
Yeah, this is only January of 1941, so we're nearly a year before Pearl Harbor, right? December 7th of 41. He drives cross-country after being yanked off the course at the Oakland Open. He arrives home.
So he's in Oakland, California.
Correct.
He gets the telegram that he's being drafted.
Right.
Comes back.
No super highways in those days.
Right.
Drives all the way across the country. Takes 4 or 5 days. Gets home. There's another letter waiting for him saying, "We've pushed your induction back to March." So he gets back in the car. Apparently forgets his golf clubs, or his father took him out of the car. Drives all the way across the country. He's due to play with Bing Crosby as the defending champion in the Crosby. And he arrives, finds out he doesn't have his golf clubs. Crosby organizes a search party, comes up with enough golf clubs from 6 different bags to play golf, and he goes out and he breaks the course record playing with Crosby.
With borrowed clubs.
With borrowed clubs.
And it wasn't, back in those days, it wasn't at Pebble Beach. It was down, I think, in Rancho Santa Fe in Southern California.
That's correct.
But it was still known as the Crosby Pro-Am. He won what, Pete? Like 7 or 8 times on tour?
Yeah, he
Played
won,
in 3 Ryder Cups. Tell us about his Ryder Cup experience.
I can't remember the years. It was John can tell you. But
47.
It was
he and Lou Worsham beat Henry Cotton and his partner.
like
10 and 9.
51 and 55. There was like a gap in there. 47, 51, 55.
I know in
51 and
53, I
53,
believe,
yeah.
in a foursome match, he defeated, I guess, a very young Peter Allis.
Peter Allis is correct.
Yeah, Peter Allis, of course, who passed away earlier in the last 6 months. And Peter Allis, of course, was a great golfer, but also a great golf commentator, both in the UK and also in the US. Getting back to Ed Oliver here in Wilmington, he married when he was at Fort Dix. I think he met his future wife.
When he had his tonsils out or something, he met.
Right. She was the
A
nurse.
nurse, an Army nurse.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
they get married and have how many children?
They have 4.
4, and you knew some of those kids.
So I grew up down the street from the Olivers. My father was very close to him, had played on the caddy team with him out here. You know, that's what really caused my interest and ongoing relationship with Oliver and the family. One of the great things about doing this book is I worked very closely with the family, obviously getting some information and stories from them, but they would remind me every time I spoke to them, you know, John, we barely knew our father. He was gone all the time. The youngest, who's 70 now, he was only 9 when his father died. So
Ed passed away of cancer. Did a lot of events to raise money for cancer research too.
Wow, there was such an outpouring around the country. In fact, the largest fundraiser in terms of making money was one that Bing Crosby participated in 3 years after he died in California. But the fundraising was run by the Western Golf Association, which of course runs the BMW, which is coming here this year. Oliver had such a great record in the Western Open that they kind of adopted Oliver, and they were very close to him.
How about that, the irony that in 2022, as you mentioned, the BMW Championship is going to be played right down the street at Wilmington Country Club. Gentlemen, stay with us. We're going to be back in a moment after teed off, and we'll wrap up our show on the great Ed Oliver here on Inside Golf. Welcome back. Inside Golf continues. It's time for our teed off panel to get with it again. We're in the grill room. We went indoors here at Lulu Country Club. All right, our panel today, Oscar Mestre. You know him. He's the president of the Golf Association of Philadelphia. He's going into another term, so 2022 will be another great year for GAP, I'm sure. He's won everything. I mean, most recently, Senior Player of the Year in the Golf Association of Philadelphia. So good to see you, Oscar.
Good to be here. Thank you, Harry.
And coming off his centennial year, not yours, but you know what I mean, from the Philadelphia section of the PGA, where he's the communications director, Mr. Matt Fry.
Thanks for having me, Harry.
BQ, Brian Quinn, teacher, instructor, golf course administrator at 1912 Club, and golf coach at Temple University. Good to see you, BQ, as always. You look like the Black Knight there.
Yeah, just a little bigger than him, but yeah, thanks for having me. Always a pleasure to be around you, Harry.
Good to see you. And from our host club here at Lulu, Jim Sullivan, former professional, great amateur, captain of all the Lulu teams, won the club championship this year. I don't know if you were like Phil Mickelson, were you like one of the oldest guys?
I would have been one of the oldest guys.
Okay, I didn't, but look, he's still young. He's still young.
Treat to be here.
Right. 2021 was a great golf year. Every year's a great golf year, but this had some memorable moments, Oscar. For instance, I jotted a few down, and if you have any others, but I'd like you to comment. We had the Tiger crash. I don't know if it was a good moment, but it was a notable moment. We had Phil winning the PGA Championship at the age of 50. The U.S. domination in the Ryder Cup. They're just three of some of the ones that came to mind. Would you agree that 2021 wasn't without some notable stories?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know, memorable for sure that to have the Ryder Cup, the U.S. victory at the Ryder Cup, you know, that to me would be my number one storyline of the year. Very, very closely followed by Tiger's car accident. I mean, that dominated the news. How do we not recognize that as an event?
And that's going to go on into 2022.
And that's going to go on, absolutely. And then, you know, there was major changes both at the USGA, from Mike Davis to Mike Wan, and in the and in the LPGA, from Mike Wan leaving to their new executive director. So historic, you know, LPGA going to be run by a woman for the second time in its history. That's historic. So those would be my top three in an event-filled year, for sure.
Exactly. How about it, Matt Fry, your perspective on the previous 12 months?
Yeah, you know, I watch a lot of women's golf, and I feel that women's golf has gotten a lot more chatter the past couple of years, starting with the pandemic and into this year, kind of culminating with the Solheim Cup. I don't think I've seen as much chatter online, Twitter, Facebook, whatever, about the game, particularly during the Solheim Cup. There seemed to be so much excitement, which was very cool because a lot of times they don't get as much credit as they deserve. And I really hope that trend continues into next year and beyond.
You know, Brian, I mentioned you're the Temple golf coach, have been for years, but more and more college golf, male and female, was getting exposed on television, I think, and in 2021 it was no exception. I hope it continues. I don't know if it's going to be the Golf Channel or how it's going to continue. That's another topic for 2022 is the expansion of golf on ESPN+. But do you agree that college golf is starting to get more attention?
Oh, absolutely. I just think the programs, they're really, truly a developmental program now. I mean, you see Major League Baseball starting to cut down some of their affiliates and utilizing the college athlete more and more. You're seeing a lot more college baseball players coming right out and getting into the majors. And that's what's happening really in college golf. These kids now are so seasoned, so used to traveling as much as a normal tour player. You know, for example, Temple University this past fall, we were on the road for 6.5 weeks.
Is that the most you've been on the road?
In
your tenure? Or?
No, we do 14 weeks a year generally, and so that's a half a semester if you really look at it for these kids. So the time management, all these preparations that you need to have when you go out to play professional golf, they're actually starting to learn how to develop that, in college.
Sure. Sully, I know it was a big year for you personally. I mentioned club championship.
Well, assuming we're taking the club championship here off the list, that's probably more of a local interest. How about the Saudi Golf League or whatever is becoming of these new golf leagues? I mean, I have no doubt that I think they're funded basically with an unlimited budget. So I think they're going to find a way to make it go at it. And will the top 10 or 15 players on the U.S. Tour, will they hold strong with the U.S. Tour? There's certainly a lot of incentive to stay there, but when somebody offers you $50 million to show up or $100 million to show up, I think you're going to get some eyeballs there. So if we look back 5 years from now, a lot of these things are certainly interesting. I'll be curious if the Ryder Cup team dominates the way it looks like they could. Phil's going to be in the record books for a long time with that. But I think there's a chance that in 5 years, the whole landscape of professional golf changes.
Yeah, well, it is changing. It is ever changing. It's good to see the college kids get exposed. And I think the reason they are to the satisfaction of a lot of people is the fact that they're so good. Yeah. I mean, a lot of these kids, as soon as they get done playing on TV as a collegiate, you see them playing on the PGA Tour or the LPGA Tour.
Absolutely.
They're really good at a young age. Gentlemen, thank you. We'll be back. More of Inside Golf in just a moment.
Designed by Donald Ross, Lulu Country Club is one of the premier private golf courses in Montgomery County. This classic 18-hole course boasts a new state-of-the-art clubhouse with many amenities for members to enjoy. Members are invited to play in events, tournaments, and enjoy guest privileges. For more information, contact membership at lulucc.com.
They're not just familiar faces. They're your friends and neighbors. It's their small businesses, a beating heart that makes a neighborhood a home. The places with a pick-me-up or a story that inspires, where you can share a taste of comfort with the personal touch that makes our world shine a little brighter. Support small and make a big difference. Make it local. Make it Main Street. Make it Montco.
Welcome back to Inside Golf as we wrap things up on the life and the times and the player, Ed Oliver, here at Ed Oliver Golf Club in Wilmington. John Riley, Pete Trenum with us. John wrote the book, How He Played the Game. I guess could describe this book as you did to me before we started the show in terms of how the three dominant players of his era, Snead, Hogan, and Byron Nelson, all played against him, beat him, but lost to him. Beat him in a lot of big tournaments, but it's really their story, his story combined.
Yeah, I've, as many of us have, read a lot of books about Hogan, Nelson, Snead. This is a story of those three players just told through a different lens.
Right.
Their names appear over 1,200 times in the book. So it's more of the story from a guy who played them all the time, many times beat them, many times lost to them. They were the great players, they were the big names, but here's a guy who had to make a living every day against them. His last major win was the Houston Open in 1958. He overtook Roberto Di Vincenzo to win the Houston Open, shot a 67 the last day. And it wasn't too long after that he was diagnosed with cancer.
Yeah, you know, I guess, Pete, you would know, this is part of the Philadelphia section of the PGA. He's not in, though, the local sections Hall of Fame. We got to do something
Well, they have
to
a
get
rule.
him in there, huh?
You have to be a member of the Philadelphia PGA for 10 years.
Right.
And Ed Oliver was in Hornell, New York. He was in Massachusetts. He was in Denver. He was in the state of Washington.
Oh, you know what we got to do?
He was in the service.
We got to give a shout out to the Philly section and say, we need an exemption for Ed Oliver. Put him in there. That's all we're going to do.
We do need an exemption.
We don't want to get you in trouble.
No,
I'll get in trouble.
We do.
We need an exemption.
Yes.
John Riley, thanks for all of
All right,
your
that's great.
contributions.
Thank
Where
you.
can they get the book?
Yes, the best way to get the book is to just go on the website, olivergolfbook.com. You can order it right there, see all the reviews, and also you can pick it up at some of the golf clubs, including right here, the Ed Oliver Golf Club.
All right, our thanks to the folks here at the Ed Oliver Golf Club in Wilmington, to John Riley, and always to Pete Trenum. I'm Harry Donahue. Remember, no matter how bad it's going for you out there, don't pick up. We'll see you next time on Inside Golf.
The 25th season of Inside Golf is presented by Destination Montco Golf. Your next golf getaway is in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. Visit montcogolf.com. By the First Tee Greater Philadelphia. The First Tee not only helps young men and women become better golfers, but most important, better people. Get involved. Visit firstteephiladelphia.org. By the Philadelphia Association of Golf Course Superintendents, a community of professionals enhancing the game of golf since 1925. Make sure you thank your golf course superintendent today. By Gap, celebrating 125 years of amateur golf. By Jersey Man and Philly Man Magazine, a digital publication and private business network. Read the current issue free at jerseymanmagazine.com. By the Haverford Trust Company. For life's must-haves, there's Haverford. And by Inside Golf's partner since 1998, the Philadelphia PGA section, the experts in the game and business of golf.